Monday, March 13th, 2023. This video, old school versus new school, baseball, pitching wins. Who performed better? The old school era, 1870s through 1949, or the new school baseball era, 1950, 2022. Let's look at the stats and the accomplishments. Take a 10-year period, a decade, figure out which pitcher had the most wins. Add up the decade to average it out and see who performed better, which era. Let's start with old school. 1870s. The average pitching wins was 37 wins a year. That was the average for the decade. Who had the most? Al Spalding, 54 wins one year. So the average is way up. 1880s, again, pitching wins average for the decade, the 10-year period, was 42 pitching wins for the year. Who had the most? Charlie Radburn had 60 wins one year. Incredible. 1890s, average pitching wins, 32. Who had the most during the 1890s? Amos, Rusi, and Cy Young won 36 games one year. 1900s, the average 32 pitching wins. Who had the most? Jack Chesbrough, 41 wins. 1910s, the average pitching wins, 29 wins. Who had the most in the 1910s? Walter Johnson, 36. 1920s, average pitching wins for the decade, 24. Who had the most? Dazzy Vance won 28 games. 1930s, average pitching wins, 26. Who had the most during that decade? Lefty Grove, 31. 1940s, average pitching wins, 23. Who had the most during the 1940s in one year? Hal Newshauser had won 29 games. So the aggregate pitching wins for the first 75 years of baseball, the average, 30 wins a year for the first 75 years. Let's look at new school. 1950s, the average, 23 wins. Who had the most? Robin Roberts, 28. 1960s, average pitching wins, 24. Who had the most? Sandy Koufax, 27. 1970s, average pitching wins, 23. Who had the most? Steve Carlton, 27. 1980s, average pitching wins, 19. Who had the most? 1980s. Steve Carlton, 23. Nope. Yeah, Steve Carlton, 24. Pardon me. 1990s, average pitching wins, 20 wins. Low. Who had the most? John Smoltz, 24 wins. 2000s, average pitching wins, 17, goes down. Who has the most? Randy Johnson, 24. And then, yeah, so the 2000 to 2022, the average is 17, and Randy Johnson had the most. So what's the aggregate pitching wins? 1950 to 2022. 21. What did I say on old school? 30. So that means that the old school pitchers were better than new school pitching. You agree or disagree? And after doing all my videos on this old versus new, In the 13 offensive categories that I covered, it was 8-5 old school. Now starting off with pitching, old school wins it 30. Pitching wins a year, average, versus 21 for new school, average. So right now the score, I'll write it down, is old school 9, new school 5. Next video, pitching innings. Who's going to win that one? Stay tuned. I'm out.